G'day viewers, how you doing? You may recall a couple of weeks ago I did pose the question, is Train Sim World being replaced? And that was triggered by the announcement from Metro Rivals New York, which is a train simulator in UE5, running Simugraph, the same thing in Train Sim World. Here's up first is a bit of a summary of how the community generally felt. There were a lot of comments, okay? There were a lot. And I've summarized them in a few themes, if you like, and then I'll go through some specific ones. Skeptical and cautious is the title for this bit, and the biggest fear is that a switch to UE5 would be a complete reset, meaning that the massive collections of purchased routes and locomotives from Train Sim World would not be compatible, effectively requiring players to start over. Many users argue that DTG should focus on fixing the numerous bugs and core issues in the current UE4 version of TSW before attempting a complex engine upgrade that would inevitably introduce new problems. And on the timeline, one commenter specifically estimated that TSW probably isn't going anywhere for at least 3, 4, 5 or more years, suggesting the Metro Rivals project is more of a test for specific features like multiplayer rather than immediate replacement. Let's go through these. So it is going to be a complete reset. It could if it happens, but it might not. So we shouldn't assume it is. But we had TS1, which was Train Simulator. TS2, which is Train Sim World. This would potentially be TS3. And would it take the DLC from TS2? Well, TS2 didn't take the DLC from TS1. So I guess it would depend on how different it was. Maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe it is. I don't know. And if we look at fixing the numerous bugs and core issues, yeah, it's got some bugs. It's got some issues. They're not all actually bugs. A lot of what people perceive as bugs is actually wrong, so they have no idea about trains. So yeah, it's definitely got things wrong with it, for sure. But, and they're talking about before attempting complex engine upgrade, it wouldn't be an upgrade. It'd be a totally new game, rewritten from scratch. No chance this is an upgrade. The time frame, I tend to think that's probably not that far out, to be honest. So I reckon, will we see TSW 7? Yeah. 8? Yeah. 9? Maybe. 10? No, I'm guessing no. But, yeah, I reckon it'll come. The next group of people I would label as hopeful and enthusiastic. Now, these are next-gen people. Many players are eager for the graphical leap and technical features that UE5 offers, such as Lumen and Nanite, which they believe would deliver a higher level of realism currently unattainable in TSW. Technical advancement. The community acknowledges that a transition would allow Dovetail to drop support for older consoles, actually forces them to, because it doesn't run on old consoles, and eliminate memory constraints that currently limit timetable size, route length, and AI traffic density. That is wishful thinking, because changing the engine is not going to make much difference to the memory it's using. Inevitable change. A significant number of users believe that the shift to new engine is an inevitable step for the franchise's long-term growth, similar to a jump from Train Simulator Classic to Train Sim World. I do think this is the case. This is what I expect. So, in essence, while most players are excited by the potential of a UE5-powered sim, there's a strong concern that such a transition will be disastrous due to the potential abandonment of their purchased DLC collection. So I'm going to look at some detailed responses now, and I've labelled them again. Cautious acceptance, long-term testing, and the sentiment on this one's kind of neutral. If I think there was a principal commenter, I've put it in here, or commenters. So Saints Rail believes that Metro Rivals is primarily a multiplayer test bed. They speculate that Train Sim World will not be replaced for another 3 to 5 years, depending on the success of Rivals. And they view the current development as a preparation, not an immediate replacement. I reckon that's right. Well, that's pretty spot on, I think. Disappointment in lack of innovation, with a big thumbs down. This one's from Rakarnuts13. The user notes that the current train simulators, TSW, TSC, and Trains, are seeing falling reviews. That's bogus for a start, and are being outpaced by innovative competitors that have Simrail and Derail Valley. Derail Valley's pretty big. Simrail's tiny. Absolutely tiny. Bugger all players compared to Train Sim World. And yes, it's got good reviews, but so does TSW and TSC and Trains. So to say that they're seeing falling reviews, it's just wishful thinking by someone who hates the game, and that's fine. The reality is people like Train Simulation. They continue to like the other games. That's not going to change. The key, and he thinks the key reason is frustration with DTG's lack of innovation compared to newer titles. I don't know what you can point at in SimRail and Derail Valley other than multiplayer that's actually innovative compared to TSW, really. They've got really similar ways of doing really similar things. That's life. You don't have to agree with me, that's fine, and you won't. Strategic timeline and next-gen readiness. Big thumbs up from quite a few people, including David Tenney Coed and Psych Records. The move to UE5 is supported as a necessary strategic step to prepare the franchise for next-gen consoles, which are expected 26-27. I'm not too sure about that date range. It's getting onto that time frame, but we've not really seen much going on. We've only seen little movements. We've not seen a big leap in anything or big announcements. And we've just had IGN. I would have thought if it was 26, it would have been announced at IGN. But, you know, it's viewed as maybe C3. It's viewed as solving the limitations that UE4 is currently imposing on TSW. Acknowledges the need for technological upgrade for future-proofing and better content delivery. I think that's fairly right, though. So ignoring the console dates, I actually think this is pretty right. Content loss, dilemma, and financial stress. Big thumbs down. Quite a few people here, including David Drives, Maverick, and that train guy, and a few others. This is a major pain point. Users are unwilling to abandon their significant financial investment in TSW content. Of course they are. They fear a new sim will start with a lack of stock and empty timetables, and oh no, I don't have the money for this. And they fear losing money and their existing collection, which is seen as irreplaceable. Fair enough. Now, the stuff didn't come from TS1 to TS2 because totally different. But TS2 to TS3, I would think you'd plan, wouldn't you, to bring DLC over in some way, shape, or form? I would think that would happen. Because they're going to want a selling point, and they bring out another game, TS1, with 3 routes. Meh. We going to do that again? I really don't think so. I actually think the DLC, a way would be found to port the DLC. Remastering. Big thumbs up. Real Lord Vectron and Sky Blue Rob and a few others. These users support the move but propose compromise. They're willing to pay an upgrade fee or purchase a remastered version of their current TSW content to migrate it to the new engine. They support UE5 but insist on a clear paid path for content migration. This I could see as a possibility because if you want the enormous amount of dev work done, if it's getting paid for in some way, even some of the cost of doing it. So let's for argument's sake, it was the fifth or a quarter of the cost of the DLC. So if it was, if it was $40 before, it'd be $10 for the remastered version. But could work. I don't know that I actually support that much because if you've got 100 DLC, that's still a lot of money. See where it goes. Technical skepticism and hardware barriers. These people are just plain wrong. Let me say that now. So Coldbearer774 and Pooty Spiker. Ooh, negative Nancy. Users are highly skeptical of the UE5 engine itself, fearing that it will make the game horribly resource hungry and run like shit and most won't be able to run it. They clearly haven't run Subway Simulator 2, which is in UE5, the tram games, the bus games that are in UE5. UE5 runs fine. And they have concern over performance issues and rising system requirements. There is a rise in system requirements, I'll give them that, and potentially excluding a large part of the community. I definitely don't give them that. The min spec for UE5 is a 4-core 2.5 GHz CPU, 8 GB RAM, and any DX11 or DX12 CPU with 2 GB RAM. That's a pretty low mark. But to run well, you want 32 GB RAM and 8 GB VRAM. Gen 9 consoles can run UE5. Average PC, according to Steam, is Windows 10 11, 6-core, 2.3 to 2.69 GHz CPU, 16 GB RAM, and a GTX 1650 or RTX 3060 with 8 GB on a 1080p display. And remember, that's the average. There's people below that, there's people above that. That's the average. Where people may come unstuck is that you need to be on a 12th gen CPU or better. That's my suggestion. With DDR5 RAM. Because you need the speed of the data bus. It's really important for UE5. And you definitely need SSD storage. So if you've got spinning Rust, What are you doing? But anyway, I'd be, you don't need to upgrade for this, obviously, because it's just speculation anyway. But if you want to run UE5 stuff, you need fast storage, fast data bus, fast PCI, which means you want to be 12th or better. Because, it was a bit slow before that. Just a little bit slow. And you want fast RAM too. And make sure you turn on XMP. Don't be those people that don't turn on XMP and only run the RAM at snail base. This one was interesting because it was an official confirmation. Excuse me. And a few people had this idea. Official statements confirm that Metro Rivals uses UE5 to create the groundwork for future UE5 train titles and to bring Semiograph to the new engine. This confirms a long-term goal, but implies a lengthy process. That bit's quite right. And they say it's confirmed by Dovetail Games that Rivals is a foundational learning process. That's also right, but they want it to be a commercial success as well. So it really needs to be a commercial success for them to probably even think about funding UE5 for Train Sim World. Because it's a big deal. There's a lot of money. We're probably talking, probably 2 years development for the game itself, I would think. And if you thought, I don't know, maybe 35 to 40 days for every DLC to be ported, we're talking millions of dollars. Millions. And that's got to be funded somehow. Will Rivals fund it? No. It'll be some kind of commercial financing. So it means it has to be cost positive, or it'll never happen. It's got to actually have a return, or they'll never get funding. So my final conclusion, I still reckon it's happening. I reckon we're going to see TS3. It will be Train Sim something, whatever it is. I don't know. But I reckon that is going to happen. I tend to agree it's probably 3 to 5 years away. I think that would be a reasonable ballpark because it'll take 6 months to settle Rivals down probably. And, but a lot of learning go on in that process. Yes, UE5 is going to bring some really cool stuff. Yeah, UE5 will actually knock some people out. 8th gen people. Screwed. But, your console's 12 years old. Get a new one. The PC stuff, I don't think that's as bad as it seems, really, because with the average at an acceptable level, in fact, it's well above an acceptable level, the average, except for the RAM, but RAM's easy to fix. Going up the other end, pretty easy. The people who are below that, it's probably still going to work. They're just going to get a low frame rate. And they're probably getting a low frame rate now, to be honest, in UE4. So you're not going to see that much difference, to be honest with you. Because looking at the tram games and the Subway Sim 2, I don't see that much performance difference between Subway Sim and Subway Sim 2, 4 and 5. Didn't change much. So I don't think it's all that much bigger thing to worry about. Now, I do admit, I said that before when we moved to 427 from 413 or whatever it was. That was a bit shit. But anyway, I think for the most part, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Alrighty, enjoy yourselves, folks. And if you've got any further comments or questions or suggestions, chuck them down below and we will maybe do another one of these. All right, see you later.
We played a game.